Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. We start from Somalia, where at least 79 people have been killed after a car bomb detonated at a busy checkpoint in Mogadishu. The information ministry said 149 were wounded and the death toll will rise. Police said the blast targeted a tax collection center during the rush hour in the capital. Mogadishu Mayor Umar Mohammed said 2 Turkish nationals and several university students were among those killed. No group has claimed the responsibility for the attack. Moving on to Afghanistan, where 10 soldiers have been killed after the Taliban attacked a military post in southern province of Helmand. In a statement, the military said 4 others were wounded in the attack as 16 troops were stationed at the outpost. The Taliban have claimed the responsibility for the attack, saying they killed 26 soldiers. Taliban spokesperson Zabiullah Mujahid said a sizable amount of weapons was seized by the group's fighters. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan says the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's BJP is doing in India what Adolf Hitler's Nazi party did in Germany. Speaking at a ceremony in Peshawar, Khan says the recently enacted citizenship law is meant to marginalize Muslims in India. The Prime Minister said India is committing human rights violations in occupied Kashmir. He said all communities in India are protesting against the contentious law. Khan says India may resort to a false flag operation in Azad Kashmir to divert the world's attention from its domestic chaos. In India, the opposition Congress party has held protests against the controversial citizenship law in Mumbai on its foundation day. Thousands of Congress members and supporters took to the streets of the Indian financial hub against the anti-Muslim legislation. Earlier, former party president Rahul Gandhi compared the law to the ruling BJP's demonetization policy, saying the whole nation will face a great loss because of it. The Islamic organization Tawheed Jamaat is also holding a demonstration against the law in the state of Tamil Nadu. Meanwhile, the Indian government has registered a case against 10,000 students of Aligarh Muslim University for protesting. 27 people have died across India in protests against the new act. Meanwhile, a police officer from the Indian state of Uttar Pradesh has been caught on film telling Muslims protesting against the citizenship law to go to Pakistan. In a video, the superintendent of police can be seen threatening Muslims with extremely communal and threatening remarks. The officer called on the Muslim community to leave the country if they want to praise the neighboring nation. Meanwhile, Indian mobile operators are losing over $350,000 every hour because of the suspension of services. The Indian Cellular Operators Association said mobile internet was ordered shut in at least 18 of Uttar Pradesh districts yesterday. The Indian government has repeatedly shut down communication services in cities including Delhi, Lucknow and Agra in the last 3 weeks to curb the protests. In another development, refusing to put up with further caste discrimination and torture, 3,000 Dalits from the Indian state of Tamil Nadu have decided to convert to Islam. Dalits are considered the lowest caste and untouchables in Hinduism and have faced abuse in the Indian subcontinent for centuries. General Secretary of Dalit Rights Outfit, Tamil Puligal Kachi, said they have had enough and will convert next month. He said his community will no longer live under suppression and racial abuse. All converting Dalits belong to 5 districts: Rode, Coimbatore, Tirupur, Namakkal and Salem of Tamil Nadu. In India, at least 10 infants have died within a span of 48 hours this week in the western state of Rajasthan. Authorities have formed a 3-member team to investigate the matter as the reason for the deaths remains unknown. Local media says 77 children have died in a month and a total of 940 expired this year. It said an initial investigation revealed a lack of infrastructural amenities in the hospital. The children's deaths reflect India's underfunded and poorly managed public healthcare system, which hasn't improved despite the government's vows to fix the system. In Algeria, President Abdelmadjid Tebboune named Abdelaziz Gerard the country's new prime minister as demonstrations against the ruling elite continue. Gerard is a university professor and former diplomat who also served under former President Abdelaziz Bouteflika. Other members of the new government are expected to be named in the coming days. This comes days after the country's powerful army chief, Ahmed Gaid Salah, died of a heart attack. A wave of protests has gripped the country since February, first calling for the ouster of Bouteflika and now pushing for a complete overhaul of the political system, which has been in place since Algeria's independence from France in 1962. On 12th of December, Tebboune was elected as president in a controversial election. Moving on to Iraq, where one U.S. civilian contractor has been killed in a rocket attack on a military base in Kirkuk. In a statement, the U.S.-led coalition says the attack on the K-1 base wounded several American service members and Iraqi personnel. It said Iraqi security forces are leading the response and investigation. No group has claimed the responsibility for the attack yet. U.S. interests in Iraq have been hit by a flurry of rocket attacks since late October, prompting Washington to call on Baghdad to protect them. Washington has blamed Iran-backed paramilitary groups for these attacks. In Syria, nearly 250,000 people have fled Idlib over the last 2 days amid bombardment by the government and Russian warplanes. The United Nations says the mass displacement has left the Marait al-Noman region almost empty. On Thursday, U.S. President Donald Trump urged Tehran, Damascus and Moscow to stop killing people in Idlib. He said Turkey is working hard to stop the ongoing carnage in the region. Idlib is the last major stronghold of rebels fighting government forces since 2015. The UN General Assembly has approved a resolution condemning human rights abuses against Myanmar's Rohingya Muslims and other minorities. The world body voted 134 to 9 with 28 abstentions in favor of the resolution. The bloc called on Myanmar's government to take measures to combat incitement of hatred against the minorities in Rohingya, Rakhine, Kachin and Shan states. The UN condemned abuses against the minorities, including arbitrary arrests, torture, rape and deaths in detention. The body has adopted an over $3 billion budget that for the first time includes funding for the investigation of war crimes in Syria and Myanmar. The Rohingya crisis exploded in 2017 when Myanmar's military launched a campaign against minorities in Rakhine. Malaysia says it will neither refuse asylum to Uyghur Muslims nor will it extradite them. Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad said they should be granted the right to seek asylum in another country. The Malaysian Prime Minister was of the opinion that Uyghur are not fairly protected. Earlier, China had slammed the U.S. House of Representatives for passing a bill requiring the Trump administration to toughen its response to Xinjiang. China's foreign ministry said the bill wantonly spares Beijing's efforts to eliminate and combat extremism. In Hong Kong, police arrested 15 pro-democracy protesters during clashes in a shopping mall near the border with China. Police used pepper spray to disperse the demonstrators. Malls have become regular protest venues as protesters try to cause economic disruption during the shopping period over Christmas. The protest started in June against a bill allowing extradition to mainland China. The bill was withdrawn in September, but demonstrations continue and now demand complete democracy. In Hawaii, the remains of 6 people have been found after a helicopter crashed on the island of Kauai. The aircraft, which was carrying 7 passengers, went missing in a remote area at the end of an air tour. Rescue officials said there is no sign of survivors as the search for the final passenger will resume today. The Coast Guard said steep terrain, low visibility, choppy seas and rain hampered the search for the wreckage. They said the victims' identities have not been released yet, pending notifications from the next of kin. Kauai, Hawaii's 4th largest island, is mountainous with jagged cliffs and tropical rainforests. More stories to follow right after a short break. The United Nations says 3 staff members of the UNHCR were abducted in Democratic Republic of Congo's eastern province of South Kivu. UN's mission in DR Congo said the suspected Mai Mai militiamen attacked the refugee camp in the town of Baraka. It said militias captured a Senegalese office assistant and 2 Congolese security officers. The government forces and police have started an investigation. The UN mission has suspended its operation in the province. Uruguay's anti-narcotics authorities say they have seized a record haul of 4.4 tons of cocaine worth more than $1 billion. Naval and custom officers confiscated the drugs in a joint operation in the port of Montevideo. Officials said drugs had been hidden in 4 soy flour containers destined for Lomé, the capital of Togo in West Africa. They said the cocaine came to light when scanners at the port showed anomalies in the containers. The authorities have called it the biggest setback for the drug traffickers in the country's history. In Mexico, a sheltered home for Central American migrants in the northern city of Ciudad Juarez has been temporarily closed due to a chickenpox outbreak. Mexican authorities say 72 people, including 69 children, have been diagnosed with the virus. More in this report.
The chickenpox outbreak is the biggest epidemic eruption in Ciudad Juarez since the introduction of Trump's migrant protection protocols, also known as Remain in Mexico policy. Around 800 people in the facility awaiting their U.S. court hearings are at the risk of getting infected. Most of those infected feel unwell with symptoms like blister-like rashes, fevers, and fatigue, but some people have developed serious complications.
We can't isolate them completely, because they are families. So there are children who are 2, 3, or 4 years of age who have chickenpox. So we have an area especially assigned to children who already have chickenpox and they are receiving proper medical attention with all necessary care.
A federal official, Juan Carlos, said the virus was spread by a Honduran girl returned to Mexico by the U.S. government.
We have suspended the entry of new migrants who are returned by the United States due to the chickenpox outbreak we have at the shelter. Once controlled, more will be able to enter.
The shelter, which is run by Mexico's federal government, has not commented on the situation yet.
In Germany, the Baltic island of Krems has become a research home for deadly animal diseases. The Friedrich Loeffler Institute tests the world's most dangerous viruses on animals to develop vaccines that could save lives. More about the research center in this report.
The research institute, Reims Island, is the oldest center for the study of viruses in the world. Dozens of animals are deliberately infected here with viruses as part of the research to monitor the effects of diseases. There are 89 laboratories and 163 stables.
So we really are the Alcatraz for viruses, a kind of prison for viruses. We do everything possible to ensure they do not spread.
There are between 80 and 100 large animals on the island, including alpacas, boars, cows, goats, and sheep. The researchers said when the animals get too sick, they are put down so as not to let them suffer.
Our biggest task is working out preparations for an outbreak. We try to investigate everything that is possible without animal testing. Nothing goes into the animal that I could answer in cell culture.
The government has invested some $334 million in the institute since 2008. There is no installation like it in Europe, although there are similar facilities in Australia and Canada.
In the United States, a giant New Year's Eve crystal ball has arrived at Times Square in New York City. The geodesic sphere features 192 newly designed Waterford crystal triangles. What about the ball in this report?
Every year, Waterford Crystal, owned by Fiskars Group, designs and creates a series of new crystal triangles for the ball. This year's design features 3 pineapples to represent the gift of goodwill.
Now, goodwill and hospitality is very synonymous with the pineapple going back to colonial times. So it is celebrating hospitality for centuries, and that's what it's all about today.
Countdown Entertainment President Jeffrey Strauss says the Times Square New Year's Eve ball is the largest crystal ball in the world.
I can't think of a better way to ring in 2020. That ball that we'll all watch is over 12 feet in diameter, it has over 32,000 LEDs, and it weighs nearly 6 tons.
More than 1 million people are expected to crowd the Times Square to watch the crystal ball countdown to the new year.
More stories to follow right after a short break. Stay tuned with the Indus. Lows in the highs of the business world now. Russia's Gazprom says it has paid $2.9 billion to Ukraine's Naftogaz to settle a long-running dispute over transit fees for gas. Gazprom spokeswoman said the payment has been done in accordance with the decision of the Stockholm Arbitration Court. Last year's ruling by the Stockholm Court was a major stumbling block to agreeing on a new gas transit deal between Moscow and Kiev. The Russian gas giant previously rejected the claim, but President Vladimir Putin said Russia wanted to find a solution. Last week, Moscow and Kiev signed a preliminary deal on the transit of Russian gas to Europe via Ukraine after months of difficult talks. Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has unveiled the country's first homebred automobile prototype. Speaking at the launch ceremony, President Erdogan said the move will realize the country's long-time dream. More about the car in this report.
The new car Tog will be available in the market in 2022. The electric car will have 5 models with 170,000 units produced in a year. The project is expected to cost over $3.5 billion in over 13 years. Erdogan said Turkey wants it to become a global brand.
We are preparing our country for the future with this car project, together with its design, battery and charging stations. There are very few countries which are capable of doing this in the world. By entering the field of electric cars from the very beginning, Turkey is moving ahead of everyone.
Turkey is already a big exporter of cars made domestically by Ford, Fiat Chrysler, Renault, Toyota and Hyundai.
And now the weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News.